I'd like to know more about, we talk a lot in this field about moments, and that moments matter. It's what you just were talking about. Sometimes miscarriages seem like a moment and then you go on and it's forgotten about. And we know that that's not the case. And we know that there are moments that are held in your mind and your heart for the rest of your lives. So, can you talk about that moment when you found out?
So we had been in just like a typical OB exam room, using the Doppler, trying to find the heartbeat. I remember feeling very nervous after our midwife couldn't find it. And she's like, well, let me just go grab the doctor. You know, sometimes she can just get it right away. I remember feeling just like a moment of panic. But then I was like, no, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Like, it's just hiding in there somewhere. Like, it's going to be fine. But then it took the doctor a long time. And I was sitting there, and as the moments ticked by, I was just like, okay, something probably isn't right. Still, like, in the back of my mind thinking, like, everything's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. But then, you know, the logical part of you thinking, if they were pretty confident that they'd be able to hear it at this stage, something's not right. And so I do remember feeling that, like, moment of, oh dear. And then they took us back into ultrasound room number 10, the dreaded ultrasound room number 10. We were in that room several times then moving forward, but, and at that point, you know, they do the ultrasound and the image popped up on the screen.
And I didn't know what to look for, but the doctor we had was amazing. Like, she was awesome. And, like, you know, she's just like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And it's like,
and okay. I knew immediately looking at the screen, like, that's not what it's supposed to look like. And I think it was that moment, like, when all of that, the culmination of all of those emotions, like my guilt, my selfishness, my, like, not feeling prepared or ready, my, just like all of that just like kind of hit me, and it's like, this isn't actually happening. And then I started tearing up, and I could hear him sniffling in the background. Yeah. And that's when I started crying for the first time. Like, I was actually, like, sad that it wasn't going to happen, and felt even more guilty actually at that point that I had not wanted it to happen, because I actually did, and it wasn't going to. And so that, I remember that being a really hard moment. And hearing you cry, and like then, you never cry.
And then, you know, it's not even over, because they have to take measurements and all that. So then you're just like sitting there. It's like,
yeah, you're laying there in a very vulnerable, very vulnerable position, like knowing that nothing's going to happen. You're crying, I'm crying, you're crying. Everybody, it's like this very awkward, sterile hush. Like, no one's talking. Which is fine. I don't think I would have wanted people talking, but it's just, it's such an uncomfortable silence. Mm-hmm. And yeah. And then, I mean, then it's this whirlwind of, okay, well, what are you going to do now? Because you're 12 weeks, you've carried this, what we had was a blighted ovum. I carried it for 12 weeks and nothing was happening. So what are we going to do now? And so they took us into a different exam room. And I mean, one thing that I will say is that I never felt like our time was being rushed. I felt like we were the only patients in the world that they had to take care of. And that was really amazing, because I know how the clinics function. And I never once was made to feel rushed, or that they had something else that they needed to get to. They were solely focused on us, taking care of our needs, helping to explain everything to us. Mm-hmm. And that was a moment of appreciation, I think, for me.
There were a number of significant moments, weren't there? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was the moment when you started to cry? Do you remember?
I don't.
Was there a moment?
I mean, just when, you know, she's like, I'm sorry, you know, there's nothing. It's like, okay. And because then, like, Marisa says, like, well, we're at like 12 or 13 weeks now, but really this probably was weeks and weeks ago. So, all those conversations, like, it was really nothing. And it's like, you're just kind of like, oh, well, now what? And it's just like,
That's a big loss.
yeah.